The dry, metallic click echoed through the Lennox lounge like the slamming of a vault door. In that suspended moment, between the dying note of the saxophone and the shocked intake of 300 breaths, Samuel Big Sam Foster stared at the back of the head of the man he was paid to murder, a useless piece of polished steel trembling in his hand. It was September 12, 1958, just before midnight, and the grand, brutal symphony of Harlem's underworld had just hit a note of perfect, terrifying silence. Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson did not flinch. He did not duck. He completed the slow, deliberate arc of raising his glass of Hennessy to his lips, the amber liquid catching the low light. He savored the burn, placed the crystal down with a soft asterisk tink asterisk, and only then did he begin to turn. The rotation of his chair was a study in controlled power. When his eyes met those of his bodyguard of 5 years, there was no fury, no shock. There was only a profound, weary disappointment, and beneath it, the cold granite satisfaction of a theorem proven. "I was hoping you'd try," Bumpy said, his voice so quiet it seemed to amplify the silence. In that phrase was not a revelation but a confirmation. The $50,000 contract, the whispered meetings, the promises of a new life, it had all been a play, and Big Sam had merely been an actor reading lines from a script Bumpy himself had helped write 21 days prior. To understand the sheer, audacious genius of that silent gun, you must first understand the geography of power in 1958 Harlem. Bumpy Johnson was not a mere gangster, he was a necessary institution. Harlem was an island of black aspiration and exploitation within a white sea of indifference and hostility. The New York Police Department was often an occupying force. Legitimate banks redlined the neighborhood, starving it of capital. And circling like sleek, hungry sharks were the 5 Italian Mafia families, their eyes fixed on the neighborhood's lifeblood, the numbers game. The policy racket was the people's lottery. For a nickel or a dime, a maid, a janitor, a porter could dream of hitting the figure, a daily combination derived from racetrack results. The pennies added up to millions. The Mafia, having consolidated power elsewhere, saw this ocean of small change as their next conquest. They sent enforcers, brutal, blunt instruments who understood kneecaps and firebombs, but not the culture of the tenements. Bumpy's men, who walked the same streets, spoke the same language, and answered to the same community, sent them back to Little Italy bruised, broken, and empty-handed. Bumpy's power was a dual-edged sword, meticulously forged. One edge was fear, sharp and undeniable. The other was a fierce, pragmatic benevolence. He operated a shadow government. When a family faced eviction, a courier from Bumpy's office might arrive with the rent, no explicit terms attached, but with an unspoken understanding of future loyalty. When a black-owned restaurant was being shaken down for protection by corrupt cops, a single phone call from Bumpy to precinct captain, whom he kept on a regular retainer, would make the problem vanish. He funded scholarships, bought uniforms for youth sports teams, and ensured that on Thanksgiving, hundreds of baskets found their way to struggling families. He was, in the complex moral calculus of the ghetto, a Robin Hood who kept a significant portion of the treasure. This created a citadel of loyalty that cash alone could not breach. The Mafia, products of a closed, tribal system, could not comprehend this economy of respect. They saw only a business rival. Bumpy knew he was defending a kingdom. By the summer of '58, the frustration of the commission, the ruling council of the 5 families, had reached a boiling point. The old solutions had failed. Violence was met with superior, street-level violence. Bribery was pointless. Bumpy owned the politicians who mattered in Harlem. Negotiation was a non-starter. Bumpy's price was their permanent departure. In a smoky backroom of a social club in Lower Manhattan, under a cloud of cigar haze, they arrived at a new, insidious strategy. If the fortress walls were impregnable, you corrupted the gatekeeper. You found the one man inside the circle of absolute trust, and you found his breaking point. Their target was Big Sam Foster. At 6'4" and 260 pounds, he was a wall of muscle and quiet intensity. He had taken a bullet meant for Bumpy in a skirmish with Dutch Schultz's remnants in '55. He had carried a bleeding Bumpy 4 blocks to a doctor after a knife fight on 125th Street. He was the silent shadow, the final layer of defense. And as the Mafia's intelligence network discovered, he had a single glowing point of failure. His 4-year-old daughter, Keisha, was languishing in a charity ward at Harlem Hospital, stricken with polio. The medical bills were a Mount Everest of debt, and the treatments were only staving off the inevitable. Sam had asked Bumpy for help, and Bumpy, as he did for all his men, had provided a generous sum. But medicine is a voracious creditor, and the sum was a drop in a bottomless bucket. Sam watched his little girl fight for every breath, and felt the powerlessness of a giant who could break men, but not a disease. The approach was made with clinical precision. The instrument was not a thug, but a specialist named Vincent, the accountant Morty. His violence was entirely financial. One evening in late August, as Sam left his walk-up on 132nd Street, a black DeSoto sedan glided to the curb. The rear window slid down. "Mr. Foster, a moment of your time. It's about a solution to your situation." Sam's hand drifted toward his hip. Morty offered a thin, paper cut of a smile. "No weapons, just arithmetic." Against every instinct, Sam slid into the back seat. Morty didn't offer sympathy. He offered a spreadsheet of suffering and then its erasure. He opened a leather attaché case. The stacks of $100 bills were bricks of potential, of hope. $50,000. It pays every bill, buys the best specialists, buys a house with a garden where she can get strong. The price, one moment, one trigger pull. Next Friday at the Lennox Lounge. You know the routine. A car will be waiting. By dawn, you're in Florida starting over. Sam stared at the money, seeing not currency, but his daughter's laughter, her running, her life. "And if I refuse?" Morty's smile vanished. "Then you watch her fade away in that public ward, and you continue as a well-paid target. Men in your position, Mr. Foster, have a short actuarial timeline. This is not an offer. It's an exchange, her future for his." What Morty didn't know, what his calculus of human weakness failed to account for, was that Bumpy Johnson's security apparatus was not composed of soldiers with guns, but of a vast, silent network of the unseen. Harlem was Bumpy's sensor array. Old woman who sat on her stoop all day, watching. The shoeshin boy on the corner of Lennox Avenue with preternaturally sharp eyes. The bartender who poured drinks and absorbed whispers. The parking attendant, Jerome, who saw the unfamiliar DeSoto with the white driver idling in a black neighborhood, noted the plate, and saw Big Sam, his face grim, enter the vehicle. This information traveled through invisible channels, arriving on Bumpy's desk long before Sam had even made his tortured decision. This was the crossroads, the conventional response. The Mafia response was elimination, a body found in the Hackensack River, a lesson in the cost of disloyalty. But Bumpy thought in layers, in repercussions, in lasting narratives. Killing Sam would solve nothing. It would make him a martyr to his desperation, invite sympathy, and the commission would simply find another vulnerable link. Bumpy saw a greater opportunity to turn the assassination attempt into a psychological atom bomb, a demonstration of omniscience so complete it would paralyze his enemies with doubt for a generation. He wouldn't just stop the bullet. He would dismantle the gun and hand back the pieces in front of a live audience. The operation required artistry. He summoned an agging, discreet gunsmith named Leopold, a craftsman who lived in a Brooklyn basement surrounded by the scent of oil and ozone. "Leo, I need a performer," Bumpy explained. "A .38 special that looks, feels and weighs exactly like Sam's, but whose only line is a soliloquy of silence." Leo understood. Within 48 hours, he delivered a masterpiece of deception. Sam's own model, its firing pin carefully filed to a smooth nub that would strike the primer with a convincing click, but with no force to ignite it. The heft, the balance, the wear on the grip, all were perfect replicas. The swap was the riskiest move. It required accessing Sam's inner sanctum without alerting him. Bumpy used misdirection. He sent Sam on a critical, time-sensitive mission to the Bronx to collect a non-existent ledger from a fictitious informant. "Do not come back without it," Bumpy stressed, layering the errand with gravity. With Sam gone for a guaranteed 3 hours, Bumpy and his most trusted lieutenant, a ghost-quiet man known only as the Deacon, entered Sam's apartment. They found the real revolver, not hidden, but resting with the casual confidence of a daily tool in a shoebox atop his closet. The swap took less than 60 seconds. The stage was now set. All that remained was for the actor to play his part. The night of September 12th unfolded with the tense rhythm of a noir film. The Lennox Lounge was packed, a cacophony of jazz, clinking glasses, and the vibrant hum of Harlem's elite and underground. Bumpy held court at his usual corner table, discussing a new housing project with a city councilman. He was a portrait of unconcern. Sam arrived later, his face a mask of stoic agony. He moved to his accustomed post near the service door, his hand never straying far from the dummy weapon in his shoulder holster. He watched Bumpy laugh, gesture live. For a moment, the old loyalty flared, the memory of shared dangers, of personal kindnesses. Then he thought of Keisha's wheezing breath, and the flare died, smothered by the cold, heavy reality of the metal against his ribs. At 11:47 p.m., as the band launched into a frenetic bebop number, Sam moved. He was a force of nature cutting through the crowd, his eyes fixed on that spot at the base of Bumpy's skull. His hand cleared his jacket, the pistol a dark extension of his will. He closed the distance, 6 feet 4'2". He extended his arm, and he pulled the trigger. Glug! The world constricted to that single defective sound. The band screeched to a halt. Glasses paused mid-sip. 300 faces swiveled towards the frozen tableau, the giant with the gun, and the king who didn't deign to look. Bumpy's performance was Oscar-worthy. The slow turn, the calm assessment, the devastatingly quiet line, "I was hoping you'd try." It was the voice of a teacher whose student has finally, tragically, confirmed the lesson. The unraveling of Sam was total. His knees buckled. The gun, now a symbol of his own futility, clattered to the floor. Bumpy stood not with anger, but with a terrifying, pedagogical calm. He reached into his inner breast pocket and produced a long, business-size envelope. He let it fall onto the table between the half-finished drinks. "The hospital debt is cleared. As of this morning, there is a certified check in there for $10,000. It will get you and your family far from here and get Keisha the care she needs." Sam's mind shattered. The money, the one thing he had sold his soul for, was already his, granted by the man he had just tried to destroy. "Why?" he choked out, tears carving paths through his ashen face. "Why not just have me killed?" Bumpy leaned forward, his voice dropping to a register only Sam could hear, though the entire room strained to listen. "Because a dead traitor is a martyr. A living, exposed traitor is a lesson. I needed to know the limit of your loyalty. Now I do, and more importantly, they will." He straightened up, his voice rising to address the room, but his eyes still on Sam. "You will leave tonight. You will find Morty. You will tell him exactly what happened. You will tell him I knew 3 weeks ago. You will tell him that in Harlem, we see everything. And you will tell him that if they ever send another boy to do a man's job, I will not be so instructive." Sam was led out, not by Mafia handlers, but by 2 of Bumpy's men, to be deposited at a bus terminal with the envelope and a one-way ticket to oblivion. The lesson, however, remained. Bumpy turned to his audience, a room full of witnesses who had just seen myth made manifest. He raised his fresh glass. "They believe every man has a price," he boomed, the pedagogical tone gone, replaced by the voice of a sovereign. "They believe our community, our dignity, is a commodity. Tonight you have seen the truth. Our strength is not in our weapons, but in our will. Our loyalty is not for sale, because it is not a contract, it is a covenant." A roar of approval shook the lounge. The band struck up a triumphant, defiant riff. The psychological shockwave hit the commission 2 days later. When a shaken, broken Sam Foster relayed the events to Vincent Morty, the report that traveled up the chain was not of a failed hit, but of a supernatural intelligence apparatus. In their next meeting, the mood was not of anger, but of superstitious dread. Carlo Gambino, the emerging voice of cold reason, laid it out. "We have tried to break a man, and instead, he has broken our understanding. He doesn't just have bodyguards, he has the eyes of the entire neighborhood. He doesn't just foil plans, he turns our plots into his theater. To fight him is to fight a ghost in a hall of mirrors. It is bad for business." The motion was seconded. Harlem, for the first time, was officially deemed Bumpy Johnson's precinct, off-limits for direct incursion. They would stick to the docks, the unions, the white neighborhoods where their calculus still made sense. The legend of the silent gun grew in the telling, each iteration burnishing Bumpy's image not as a mere racketeer, but as a strategist of Sun Tzu's caliber. He had won a war without firing a shot, using the enemy's own weapon, greed, desperation, against them. He had transformed a personal betrayal into a public reaffirmation of his power. He proved that the highest form of authority is not the power to destroy, but the power to know, to predict, and to orchestrate reality itself. The click in the Lennox lounge wasn't the sound of a failure. It was the sound of a checkmate in a game his opponents didn't even know they were playing. It was the definitive proof that in the concrete jungle of Harlem, the most dangerous predator was not the one with the loudest roar, but the one who moved in perfect, patient silence, always 3 steps ahead of the hunt. If you understand the profound power of strategic patience, of winning the war before the first shot is even fired, then hit the like button right now. It tells us you appreciate depth, not just drama. Make sure you're subscribed to *Winds of Thought***, where we dissect the minds that moved history from the shadows. Let us know in the comments, was Bumpy's mercy a stroke of genius or a dangerous weakness? Could you have shown that same calculated compassion? And turn on those notifications, because next, we're pulling back the curtain on how Bumpy Johnson, armed with nothing but sheer audacity, walked into a summit with the entire commission and negotiated from a position of undeniable power. You will not want to miss that masterclass. For **Winds of Thought**, remember, the sharpest minds play the long game and the quietest moves often echo the loudest.